Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we're going to talk about solutions. We're going to talk about things we can actually do to help stem the tide and help stop the plague that is sweeping the nation. When we wake up every morning and we see the toll, we feel hopeless. We feel helpless because there's nothing we can do about it. And everybody's looking for some magic pill. You know, some people want to point directly to the firearm itself. This is what's to blame. Some people want to point to pharmaceuticals because there's a trend there too. Some people want to point to a whole bunch of different things. With that logic, we're never going to get there because this is a cultural issue. It's something I've said for a long time. And it's pretty widespread. Pharmaceuticals, for example. Yeah, there's a trend there. There is. The thing is, that's also just a symptom. People don't get born with a prescription. There's a reason that they were taking them. So, I had my own theories, and I've talked about them in videos. And the thing is, I would never present them as fact. I would present them as my opinion because they were based on my observations from me looking at cases that interested me. I never did it in a scientific manner. So I never had any hard data to back it up until today. The LA Times ran an article about the Violence Project. It's funded by the National Institute of Justice. It's been going on 2 years. It's a study, and it's a little different than other studies. These guys didn't set out with the idea of, okay, well, we want to see if 30-round magazines are to blame. We want to see if psychotropic drugs are to blame. It's not how they did it. They went back and they cataloged the life histories of the shooters. And they did this for every mass shooter going back to 1966 and every workplace, religious institution, or school shooter going back to 1999, whether or not it was a mass incident or not. They identified 4 things that are almost universally present. That's where we have to start. So, what are the 4 things? First one, it's one we all know. We call it bullying, but it's more than that. Early childhood trauma. This is bullying. This is parental suicide. This is child abuse, sexual abuse. This is exposure to violence at an early age. All of these things. Early childhood trauma. The next is that there's an identifiable, I think they called it a crisis point rather than a flash point. There's an identifiable moment where in the weeks leading up to the shooting, or the months leading up to the shooting, something happened. And that's when the decision was made. That was the point of no return. There was time after that incident and before the shooting where those people around the shooter maybe could have done something. Maybe they knew something was off. But because they don't know how to reach out to a professional, or they don't know how to really identify it and didn't really know what they were looking at it, nothing happened. The third thing is that they all studied other shooters. They looked at other shooters because this is a socially transmitted disease, which means in the days of social media, it can reach epidemic proportions. People that lose hope, people that reach this conclusion, they can find notoriety after their death. The fourth thing is kind of a no-brainer. This was the one that I didn't really think about, but did, and actually said in videos, but never realized how prevalent it was. Means. Yeah, if you're going to be an active shooter, you need a firearm, right? In the cases that I talked about, I pointed out that school shooters don't go and buy the gun. They get it from a family member's gun cabinet. Turns out that's not just that's not just true in the cases that I talked about. That's true in 80% of them. 80% of them. And then what they found out was that a workplace shooting was normally a handgun that was legally owned, and that public space shootings were normally illegal purchases. So what does this tell you when you really sit down and think about it? It's not going to be the answer. Just like the first one. The talking points that we're looking at as a country, they're all wrong. All of them. That's what this study is telling us. Boldly. They're all wrong. So what can we actually do? Early childhood trauma, we can't do anything about that. Really can't. Especially to stem attacks that are going to happen tomorrow. Because that happened 20 years ago. There's nothing we can do about it. Yeah, in the future, we need to let kids be kids, but that's going to require a pretty wide-ranging social reform. Okay, the crisis point. Yeah, we need to learn how to identify people in crisis. We need to learn how to identify that. We need to learn what we're looking for, and we need to learn what to do if it comes up. Because the first instinct may be to call the cops. And hopefully some psychologists can chime in on this, but that may not be the best answer from where I'm sitting. Because if they've already purchased the weapon and the cops show up, may not give you the outcome you're looking for. But there is something we can do as far as this one. Most of the incidents that triggered it, they were minor. It's a lack of coping skills. It is a lack of coping skills. If the shooter themselves had access to an inventory of methods to cope with whatever that inciting incident was, well, they wouldn't be shooting up places. So we need to start teaching that. And we need to start, as unpopular as this statement is going to be, we need to start with white males aged 16 to 35. Why? Because that's mainly who the shooters are. Expand out from there, but that's the priority. There is one thing we can do with means. Legislation, what these stats tell us is that legislation about who's purchasing the weapon isn't going to do any good. It's really not. But there's something we can do about school shootings. Lock up your weapons. Secure your firearms. And this is on the gun crowd. You got to do it. You can't just say you're going to do it. You have to do it. Secure your firearms. And don't tell your favorite nephew the code. That would have stopped 80% of school shootings. They didn't purchase the weapon. It wasn't theirs. They got it from somebody else. Secure your firearms. You may have noticed in the past that I rarely name the shooter. It's because of that third reason. They studied other shooters, and what they found out was that they can get notoriety after death. Don't name them. Don't name them. It leads to some pretty depressing comments when I do it, because people have to ask, which shooting are you talking about? Use the city location or the names of a victim. When you talk about it, don't use their name. Anything else but their name. As Orwellian as it sounds, make them a non-person. That's what we can do. That's how we can stem this tide. Secure your firearms. Start teaching people coping skills. And stop using their name. Stop glorifying them. Even though it's not glorification the way you think of it, they become notable. They make it onto a Wikipedia page. Deny them that. Now, since I have you here, there is one thing I want to point out about the El Paso shooting. I'm seeing a lot of news outlets say that, well, he went there to kill illegals. No, he didn't. He did not. He did not. I've read just about every report. Not a single one of them says that he checked visas. He went there to kill brown people. It was racism. Don't make him sound like a vigilante. It was just pure racism. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good night.